Another massive patch update has just occurred on the War Within beta, and this one is likely in response to a lot of player feedback with a ton of changes that are really addressing a lot of core fundamentals and concerns for the next expansion. And if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, then smash that subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. Now, the first thing that we are going to note here is that they are looking at leech and avoidance. In the most recent update, and a ton of discussions going on throughout the community, it has been a complaint that self-healing and self-reliance of DPS players is too high. And then this is a problem not only in PvP, but also in Mythic Plus, where healers are feeling trivialized and they end up just being the chore player where they're doing all the mechanics and they don't really heal and they do a minor amount of damage, and they've completely lost the identity of really being a healer. So it does seem like they are taking this with some seriousness, because they are reducing the effectiveness of avoidance and leech by 50%, and they are targeting a huge amount of spells and abilities as well. Things like Lichborn, Vampiric Aura, Blood Scent for Death Knight, Soul Rending for Demon Hunter, Regenerative Magic for Evoker, Sentinel's Protection for Hunter, Predator's Thirst for Hunter, Hunter's Avoidance for Hunter, Merely a Setback for Mage, Sanctified Plates for Paladin, Sanguine Teachings for Priest, Leeching Poison for Rogues, Shadowheart for Rogue, Lifeblood for Warlock, Leeching Strikes for Warrior, and Seasoned Soldier for Warrior. So right across the board, stripping out a huge amount of self-reliance, and this is to make into an attempt, the highest rated, most geared players, they need this leech to survive the keystones that they're in, and then anybody else that doesn't have it can't really even hope to get as close as they are. So it's looking to even that out and to hopefully make it so, ideally, I think that healers have to heal again. Frost Death Knights, you've been asking me, you've been coming in my stream saying, like, is this finally the time? Is this finally our time? Are we finally going to be viable? I think with this update right here, which you can see, basically all of your spells and abilities are getting buffed anywhere from 10 to 23%, it looks like at the moment. In some cases, maybe 100% damage increase. I think now is the time. They've reworked Ice Cap, so crits with Obliterate and Frost Strike will reduce the cooldown of Pillar of Frost by 15 seconds instead of Ice Cap. They're reducing the effectiveness of Pillar of Frost, but you're going to get it more frequently, and with the buff to all of your abilities baseline is exactly what they did with Destruction Warlock and Dragonflight to make it feel so juicy and so good. So just another great update for Frost Death Knight on this one, moving in a really good and positive direction. See some quality of life improvements for Eldrachi Demon Hunters, with the Reaver's Glaive having its reduced threshold to 30. For Druids, we're seeing massive buffs coming through here for Balanced Druid. Initially, some nerfs off the top here for Keeper of the Grove. Starfire and Wrath are getting 5% damage reduction, but that won't matter with the changes down below. And Cenarius' Might, at least, is giving you now 10% up from 8 haste. I think one of the biggest problems with Dragonflight moving into the War Within is that stats are going to get squished down and be very small. So buffing haste on talents is going to be a good idea again, because they nerfed a bunch of them before the end of Dragonflight because we got so much haste on our gear. Now they got to buff all the haste on the talents again, because some of the classes are just going to be completely gutted on haste. So I think this is a good idea. But for Boomkin, 5% damage buff on all abilities, and then 15 to 20% buffs, 10 to 15 to 20 to 25% buffs on basically all of your main core attacks, except your dots. Your Moonfire and your Sunfire are not really being targeted too much here. Your greater alignment with your social alignment is also getting mastery increases. So nice buffs here for Boomkin. It was lagging behind in Mythic Plus, and it was lagging behind in PvP. So like, this is going to be felt in a really good place. Do know that they also increased stamina by players by a lot to try and deal with monsters one-shotting players in Mythic Plus and PvE in general. And that has lingering effects now in PvP, where it takes a really long time to kill players. So we're going to need a lot of tuning adjustments for that. Those tuning adjustments may not even be felt with much impact because stamina is so high. Now for Hunter, they're doing a really big change here with reducing your keybind bloat. They're removing Steel Trap and they're removing Death Chakram. So you're going to be losing out on a root, but you already had Tar Trap. Maybe it was a bit, excessive to have 2 roots anyways. But Death Chakram being like that powerful cooldown effect, especially for Marksmanship Hunter, but also survival, and even Beastmaster to some extent, is getting removed. And they've said that now they can put their damage in other abilities, which is exactly what you want to be hearing, is taking the power out of cooldowns and putting them into the baseline class, so you can feel powerful at all times instead of only during these 15 to 20 second windows. And then your active global cooldown management doesn't matter too much outside of that. So it's 2 birds with 1 stone, reducing some of the keybind bloat. So it's a bit more accessible for players, not need to deal with so many keybinds, as well well as making the class feel more impactful outside of its cooldowns. We're seeing a new talent being added as well called the Implosive Trap, which is going to be a shared node with Explosive Trap. Instead of a knockback, it's going to be a knock up. So hunters are getting even more powerful with Mythic Plus. They got extra shield walls in that last patch change. Now they're getting a knock up effect. The knockback can be problematic because it just sends enemies far away and then your group has to reorganize them. This is just going to be a knock up, which is basically just going to be a pseudo interrupt for mobs to stop them from casting, and there's a ton of casts in Mythic Plus, so this is likely going to see some play there. In PvP, I think the knockback is likely still going to be more the viable option. This is more of a PvE improvement. They're focusing a lot of buffs on Explosive Shot, and they're reducing the keybinds basically for all the specs, but Survival's getting some really insane ones. Just talent readjustments for Beast Mastery, some damage enhancements, and reductions, honestly, for Marksman. They focused a lot of nerfs towards multi-shot. That's again going to be felt in PvE more than PvP, if at all in PvP. This Arcane Shot damage buff by 3%. 3% guy is back in the shop. He's working. We know the game's going to be good. Wailing Arrow and Rapid Fire are now actually properly working. They're going to generate you wind arrows, because when I was playing, it felt like it took a long time to get these, so that's really nice. But just AoE nerfs for marksmanship. But Survival is the one that's just getting like so many things. Sikkim is now Kill Command has a 15% chance to reset the cooldown of Kill Shot, make it usable on targets regardless of health, and strike up to 2 additional targets. This chance is doubled during coordinated assault. So you're going to be able to proc a ton of kill shots, and they're also going to cleave. So this is going to give you a lot of pressure in Mythic Plus on trash pulls, really pump damage there, but also a lot of 2-target cleave in PvP situations, and as well as battlegrounds, because something like Survival Hunter is typically not the greatest in battlegrounds. Giving it this type of cleave damage is definitely going to help it on the overall damage meter. Coordinated assaults damage is getting buffed by 60%, and it's also being updated. It's being redesigned. It's having a bit of its complexity removed. You and your pet charge your enemy, striking them with combined physical damage. You and your pet's bond is then strengthened for 20 seconds, causing you and your pet to deal 20% increased damage. While coordinated assault is active, Kill Command's chance to reset its cooldown is increased by 15%. And you'll note that this is important because Kill Command can then reset your kill shot. So you can get a huge amount of procs rotating between these two to get massive burst damage with this. So it's likely going to be really good in that regard. And also there's talents that now make Kill Command cleave. So in PvE situations, you're going to just get a huge AoE. Symbiotic Adrenaline's been updated. Additionally causes Coordinated Assault to grant 3 stacks of Tip of the Spear. Quick Shot has been updated. Now has a 30% chance to fire an Arcane Shot, and you can change it to an Explosive Shot when you cast Kill Command. So, being able to reset your kill commands, spam out kill commands, proc kill shots, proc explosive shots on the target, you're going to be a monster. I don't see in any world where Survival Hunter is not a monster, like in the game as a whole after this. Butchery is just getting 100% damage increase. Flanking Strike is now replacing Kill Command after it's casted 3 times, reducing the keybind bloat here. So that's already 3. Steel Trap's gone. Death Chakram's gone. Flanking Strikes is now being baked into Kill Command. Although I do see some problems with this because Flanking Strike doesn't synergize from any of the buffs of Kill Command. Like, for example, Kill Command can fire an explosive shot at the target with quick shots, and Kill Command can reset Kill Shot, but Flank Shot can't do any of those. So I could see a position where proccing Flanking Shot actually feels bad unless it does all the things that Kill Command does and basically just does a more damage Kill Command. But this is helping a lot in terms of the overall keybinds for Survival and bringing a lot of reduction down for this. Flanking range is now increased to 25 yards, so it's medium short range. Flanking Strike no longer benefits from Tip of the Spears and now generates 15 focus. Flanker's Advantage no longer grants additional reset chance based on a critical strike due to a bug. And they're also looking at Mongoose Fury. It's only going to stack to 3 instead of 5, so you don't need to spend as many times mashing Mongoose Bite, and it's going to last longer, so you can get it stacked up and hold on to it and do other things like press these kill commands that are going to proc explosive shots and kill shots and do other things than just spamming Mongoose Bite on the targets, which is likely going to be felt really nicely there. They are lowering the proc chance of Wildfire and Fusion. Again, with everything that's happening and all these procs that you're getting, they're going to have to take some of your income out resources from somewhere else, and it seems like Wildfire Bomb is where they're targeting, reducing its chance by 5%, reducing its cooldown by 0.5 from a second. So there are some trade-offs there, but I think it's going to be more than worth it in the end with the amount of damage that you're really getting out of this rework and all the defensive bonuses as well. For Mage, Arcane specifically, they're adding Evocation into the build, so you'll be able to move cast it and basically sprint. Evocation can kind of become a mini sprint. I haven't been playing Evocation in my Arcane Mage build, so it doesn't really affect me too much. For Frost, your Frost Splinters can now scale with Frost Mastery, which like is going to be a lot of cleave damage with some of the talents coming back from Shadowlands a little bit down on the post here. For Sun Fury for Arcane and Fire, Spellfire Sphere and Lingering Embers spell damage bonus for Fire Mage decreased from 1 to 2. This big nerfs to Fire Mage. Lingering Embers no longer has a stack limit. Burden of Power Pyroblast damage reduced to 15 from 30. Memories of a Large Hypothermia base duration reduced to 2 from 3. Massive nerfs. Those are going to be felt for Fire, but unfortunately, because you share the tree with Arcane, I feel like Arcane is indirectly also feeling some of these nerfs as well. For Arcane, they've moved a bunch of talents around and given you a bunch of new talents, which makes me happy I didn't make an Arcane Mage video because I was going to. Consortium's Bauble reduces Arcane Blast mana cost by 3, increases its damage, very minor here. Resonant Orb, Arcane Orb damage is buffed by 10%. For Dematerialize, spells empowered by Nether Precision cause their target to suffer damage, so you're getting a dot over 8 to 6 seconds. Energy Reconstitution, damage from this Dematerialize can conjure an Arcane Explosion at 50% effectiveness at its target's location, but won't grant you charges. So basically just extra proc damage, extra. We're procking a bunch of stuff. Like my screen was flooded with stuff. I was gonna get flooded with more stuff. In PvP, I'm getting a bit worried about how many things are just like AoE now. It's just so much at this point. And like, I don't know how you go about tailoring it so that this AoE doesn't break so many CC effects, because it's like, press this spell and it's gonna proc 6 different AoEs and extra dots. And it's like, it's getting a bit excessive here. Now, Big Brain here, gaining clear casting increases the intellect by 1%. Multiple instances may overlap, and you were getting quite a few clear casting procs, so that could be very interesting. Static Cloud, each time you cast Arcane Explosion, its damage is increased by 25% upon reaching, but it's reset upon 100. So Arcane Explosion builds are coming back. I love that playstyle from Legion, the Arcane Explosions into Barrage, into Explosion, into Barrage. So I'm very happy to see that coming back. Arcane has been a lot of fun. These changes seem to be just making it more fun. High voltage damage from Arcane Missiles has a 20% chance to grant you an Arcane Charge. Chances increased by 5% every time your Arcane Missiles fails to grant you a charge. So adding bad luck protection as well to a lot of classes, which will be nice. Arcane Orb is just baseline. Arcane Blast is getting a 10% damage buff, but the clear casting proc rate is being reduced. So, okay, with the reduction, maybe that one's not as strong for the intellect stacking. So a little bit of a trade-off with this one. Clear casting now utilizes bad luck protection. Improved Arcane Missiles damage bonus reduced to 5 from 10. A little bit of a nerf to Arcane Missiles. Crackling energy damage bonus reduced to 5, down from 10. And for Fire, you're just getting nerfed, bro. I'm sorry. Like, you're getting the floor stripped out of your house right now if you're a Fire Mage. Everything is getting nerfed by 2, sometimes 50%, sometimes by half on like almost all of your abilities. And they're really focusing on AoE, I would say, for the most part. They've said here in this post that they still want Living Bomb to be somewhat viable for single target or lower target cleave, but they are bringing down the power of a lot of your abilities for massive AoE pulls. And I mean, it was getting pretty ridiculous with how far up the amount of fire damage you were getting. And so I'm honestly not surprised to see this, but it could have lingering effects in PvP as well, because pretty much outside of like a meteor one-shot, Fire Mage damage was not that impressive in PvP, so it could have some problems there. For Frost Mage, they're bringing back the Skeleton Mage from the Shadowlands, but also making it a bit easier to use. It's only going to stack to 10 times, so you don't need to be casting Frostbolt forever. You get to 10, and then you can start doing some other things, as well as just getting an Iceland's damage buff by 12%, so some nice quality of life improvements here. For the Shadow Pan, this is a talent tree that I really want to look at, because I've seen a lot of mixed feelings about this on posts, whether or not it's good or it's bad or whatever here. So we're happy with the change to attack power as the primary driver for flurry charge generation, but the current tuning was generating charges too quickly and leaving little room for skilled players to differentiate themselves. We will continue to keep a close eye on this and appreciate your feedback. I'm very interested to see where this goes. I need to try it before I make a point on that. It seems like they're actually pretty happy with the direction that it's going. So to me, it seems a bit surprised, at least from what I've read from other players that have played it, but I need to play it myself. Fundamental observation has been removed. I have no idea what that is. If Brewmaster, please let me know. Fix an issue that caused gust of wind healing to not be increased as intended. Nice little bug fix Mistweaver damage healing buff. For Paladin, oh my god, they're doing the same thing where you're kind of getting buffed, but it's because they're reducing your keybind bloat. For Lightsmith Paladins, they're buffing Sacred Weapon, buffing Sacred its damage and its healing. Divine Guidance damage and healing increased by 100%. Blessing of the Forge Echo values brought into alignment with originating spells. Light of Dawn reduced. Denounce Echo increased. Shield of Righteous Echo increased. Sword of Glory Echo increased. Hammer and Anvil damage healing increased by 50%. They really want to try and make this one a little bit more juiced up and a little bit more viable. For rep paladins, you're getting a lot more self-sustained self-healing. This is where I think there's a bit of a disconnect between what's being relayed to us and what might be happening on the dev team on the back end, because we get interviews with Morgan Day and Ian Hatsukosa talking about how we're reducing leech. We want to make healers more impactful and feel like the healer role. But then we get something like this where Eye of Tear, Wake of Ashes surrounds you with Holy Barrier for 15 to 20% of your max health. You have a lot of health. You have a lot of health. 20% of your health is a lot. Hammer of Light heals you for 15 to 20% of your maximum health and increased by 2 to 2% for each additional target hit. Any overhealing done gets converted into a shield, so you can't even overheal with it. This seems ridiculously overpowered. This seems ridiculously overpowered. Ridiculously overpowered. I'm logging on a ret when this build goes live, bro. That's just... Okay, mind blown. An issue with free Hammer of Light casting Consuming Divine proc has been resolved. For Holy Paladin, this is where a lot of changes come in. They're putting a lot more emphasis on Word of Glory and Holy Shock because they are pruning Daybreak and Glimmer, which I think for a lot of people who played Paladin, they actually liked the playstyle of Glimmer of Light and Daybreak. It actually added a nice layer, so I'm a bit surprised to see those go, but they are going. And with them, they're going to be adding in Word of Glory. Light of Dawn have 30% increased critical strike chance on lower health targets. So very similar to like the Shaman Master, where you heal more when they're low, you crit more when they're low. New Talent Liberation, Word of Glory, and Light of Dawn have a chance to equal to your haste to reduce the cost of your next Holy Light, Crusader Strike, or Judgment. Judgment now will also heal you, and its mana cost is reduced by 30%. 50% of the overhealing is transferred. So adding kind of like that melee wings effect, it seems like they're adding that to a lot of healers. You'll be able to cat weave, fist weave, hammer weave. Everybody's weaving. At the moment, Glistening Radiance has been redesigned. Spending Holy Power has a 25% chance to trigger Saved by the Light's Absorb effect at 30% effectiveness without activating its cooldown. Oh my god, it's so... you can't get Templar's Holy. I was going to say, that's a lot of shield procking. That's going to be crazy good on your beacon targets. Light's Protection has been redesigned. Allies with Beacon of Light receive 5% less damage. Overflowing Light has been redesigned. 15% of Holy Shock's overhealing is converted into an Absorb shield. So again, can't exceed more than 10%. Just getting more shields, more healing. Bit concerned with this. Rising Sunlight has been redesigned. After casting Avenging Wrath, your next 2 Holy Shocks cast 2 additional times. After casting Divine Toll, your next 2 Holy Shocks cast 2 additional times. So basically just breaking... They're breaking the keybinds for the additional Holy Shock casts into Avenging Wrath. So you can't like separate them, and they have a longer cooldown because now they're shared with Avenging Wrath. There's going to be a little bit less maintenance for them. I don't feel like Holy Paladin was particularly high maintenance anyway, so this I feel like a lot of people are going to be kind of sad more than not here with Glimmer of Light and Daybreak going. Glorious Dawn has been redesigned. Holy Shock has a 12% chance to refund a charge when cast, and its healing is increased by 10%, and they've swapped around a bunch of talents. Now for Paladin, Ret Paladin was a bit confused with this one. Divine Wrath now extends the duration of Radiant Glory separately. New tooltip increases the duration of Avenging Wrath and Crusade by 3 seconds. So they removed Crusade. So can you not get infinite wings anymore? Divine Wrath no longer increases the duration of Radiant Glory. Or is this like something completely different? Vanguard of Justice has been updated. Enemies hit by other Holy Power spending abilities take 30% increased damage for your next Divine Storm, stacking up to 3 out of 5 times, 2-point talent point. Judge, Jury, and Executioner has been updated. Holy Power generating abilities have 15% chance to cause your next Templar's Verdict to hit an additional 3 enemies. This is very similar to Survival Hunter Cleave. Was triggered from Divine Storm, 40% chance. Judge, Jury, and Executioner no longer highlights Templar's Verdict, but instead has UI overlay. Templar slash damage over time debuff is no longer displayed in the personal nameplate, so some bug fixes here. I think the survivability of Rift's definitely going up. Nice little cleave damage talents here as well for burst, but your overall damage is probably going to get hit pretty hard if this is no longer indefinite wings. They're buffing Oracle. I think a lot of people are excited for Void Weaver and summoning in the little Void Circle and stuff like that, so Oracle's not really getting like a ton of attention. They're giving it a really big buff. Preventative measures now also increases the damage dealt by Penance, Holy Fire, Smite, and Holy Nova by 15%. A very significant damage increase to this. Probably enough that Oracle ends up, I would think, outperforming Void Weaver, which for people who like the aesthetic of it, it's going to be kind of disappointing. Rogue, it's been a long time since we got a Rogue update, although maybe longer since we got a Shaman one, but they have promised a rework for Shaman, so I'm definitely curious for that. Flensing Knives has been removed and replaced by Fatal Intent. Fatal Intent. Your damaging abilities against enemies above 20% health have a very chance to apply Fatal Intent. When an enemy falls below 20%, Fatal Intent inflicts plague damage per stack. So you can stack up this execute type mechanic. Oh, that's going to be crazy good for subtlety. Also, honestly, assassination as well. It's going to be crazy good. Like, you're stacking up your damage, stacking up this effect, and you go for your burst right when you get to 20%, and oh my god, you could get a massive hit for that. Deathstalker's Mark has had the following updates. Can no longer be reapplied if the target has a death marker stock. Duration increased to 60 up from 30. Now again applies 3 stacks up from 2. Plague damage on consuming a mark has been increased to 16.5. Next ability, damage on consuming a mark has been increased by 20. Oh my god. Fix an issue cause eviscerates and venoms empowered by Darkest Night to deal less damage than intended. Darkest Night is now granted to Rogue when a target with Deathstalker's mark dies. So a lot of Rogue buffs here for Assassination and Subtlety. For Fate Bound, which is kind of the coin flipping RNG Rogue hero spec. Hand of Fate is the following update. Streak buffs now have a duration of 15, down from unlimited. Head's buff now increases damage by 3, down from 5, plus an additional 1 per stack. Tail's base damage has been increased by 72%. Tail's buff now increases his damage by 10% per stack, down from 20. This is already the most confusing thing that I don't even understand what this means. I don't know if it's a buff or a nerf. These are so, every number is so random and in weird directions that I have no idea. I'm going to admit that right now. I have no idea what that means. I'm going to have to play a Rogue, which I'm going to if you want to follow me on my stream live, to know how that feels, because I can't decipher that. That is hieroglyphics to me. Fateful Ending had the following updates. Lucky Coin buff now increases agility by 7. Previously it was only 1. So it's just straight up 7% agility. Lucky Coin out of combat timer increased to 15, up from 10. Lucky Coin now deals cosmic damage, 170% of Tail's base damage, to your target if you already have the Lucky Coin debuff upon flipping the same phase for the 7th time in a row. Fate Intertwine now duplicates 20% of Dispatch and Venom critical strike damage, up from 15. It seems like Rogue buff, so I'm going to say that. They don't put the Shaman rework here, but I have been told there is one. I was a bit surprised it wasn't on. I thought it would be here on the Shaman section, but you guys are apparently getting a rework, which I think they really needed some attention. And the classes that are getting reworks end up seeming really good. So I'm excited to see when that one comes out. Surging Totem is now cast at your destination as opposed to beside you, so you can control where it goes, like an Earth Grab Totem or an Earthbind Totem. For enhancement, it's going to summon an Earthquake around it, it looks like, every 6 seconds for its duration. And for Resto, it'll maintain healing rate for 24 seconds. And then you can use Projection to move it around. So you can get an instant healing rain and move it around, but it's not going to keep spawning in infinite healing rains that you can't really control where they go. So it's more control, but maybe less power overall, but maybe it was too powerful to begin with. So I think this is a nice middle ground, and it makes some of the baseline Shaman talents more desirable and more, skill definition in terms of you get the healing rain ramp a lot faster, and then you can move it around if there becomes a problem with it. For Warlock, for Soul Harvester, Demonology Affliction, Shadow of Death has been redesigned. Your demonic soul lures lost spirits to you, granting you a succulent soul every 30 seconds while in combat. In addition, your demonic soul empowers your soul rot and summon Demonic Tyrant, causing it to grant 2 succulent souls when cast. Satiel's Ambition, they just renamed some abilities. Okay, so you're just going to get more damage towards Soul Rot and Demonic Tyrant with this one. For Affliction, the chance for Ravenous Afflictions actually has been increased. For Destruction, Summon Infernal now paths more pathing for your talent trees. For Warrior's getting the biggest buffs, I think, of all the classes. Blood and Thunder talents just removed. Thunder Clap by default is going to apply Rend, which is a nice quality of life improvement. Crackling Thunder is no longer going to increase Thunderclap damage, however. Champion's Might now causes you to deal 25% increased critical strike damage to targets affected by your spear. The critical strike damage bonus is now additive instead of multiplicative, matching other similar effects. Piercing Challenge now also increases all damage dealt by the spear. It was only the initial damage. Uproar now reduces the cooldown of Thunder Restore by 45, up from 30. They fixed an issue that caused Rallying Cry giving too much health, so a little bit of a nerf here for Rallying Cry, but overall nice quality of life changes for the baseline talent trees. But I think most notably right here is the damage is increased by 30% and overpower by an additional 20%. So yeah, Warrior's eating real good after these changes for sure. For Prot, Revenge now generates a stack of Colossal Might when it hits 3 or more targets. Mountain Thane, keep your feet on the ground, no longer increases your armor. Luckily, it had synergies with the armor talents, so it's just going to give you 2% physical damage reduction taken. For Slayer, Opportunist now increases the damage and critical strike damage your next overpower by 15, up from 10, so another 5% on overpower as well with this. For Fury Warrior, Anger Management is going to reduce cooldowns per 20 rage down from 30, so they went back on that change that they added to this specifically. And you're just getting a 30% damage increase as well. So Fury and Arms Warrior are both getting 30%, sometimes 55% damage increases on a lot of their spells, which is really powerful. For PvP specifically, Honor is going to be transferable to all characters in 80% conversion rate. It's already kind of like that, but I'm wondering if it's going to be smoothed out or made less tedious with like buying boxes and mailing them now with the Warband feature. For Mage, Blazing Barrier's effectiveness is no longer reduced, which I was surprised. They did add some talents that makes Blazing Barrier more like a Thorns effect, so maybe that's why they reverted it. But generally speaking, Mage Shield seemed really powerful, so I was honestly a bit surprised to see them going back on this one for PvP specifically. Unleashed Inferno is now 30% effective in PvP, up from 20. Brewmaster is getting some buffs. Now, Brewmaster is likely not going to be super powerful in Battlegrounds. I think their main focus for tuning in the War Within is going to be for Battlegrounds, so it's likely why we're seeing changes here. You're getting a 100% increase on Charged Passions, 100% increase on Elusive Footwork, and 50% increase on Nizau's Training. So really big buffs to Brewmaster. Now, as being a flag carrier in Battlegrounds, it's mobility. So Demon Hunter's being able to jump really fast and around the map, and Druid's going in stealth and being able to shapeshift slows constantly. I kind of feel like Druids and Brewmaster tanks or Druid and Demon Hunter tanks need to only queue into Druid and Demon Hunter tanks in solo queue rated BGs, because it's not going to be balanced against things like a Prop Paladin. If you have a Prop Paladin on your team flag carrying and the other team is a Demon Hunter, yeah, good luck. Good luck with that. I think it's kind of be like Prop Paladins in solo queue arena where they queue into each other. The Demon Hunters and Guardian Druids should probably only queue into each other as well. Even with buffs like this, I don't really see it being enough to bring a Brewmaster over those other two tanks in those situations. For Mistweaver, Enveloping Breath is now 100% effective in PvP, down from 111. Invigorating Mist is now 100, down from 112. Soothing Mist is now 100% effective, down from 115. So Mistweaver nerfs. Mistweaver is definitely an outlier. I'm going to spend more time on healers specifically coming through the next couple days in the beta to see what's going on with it, but I think it's mostly just because stamina has been increased so much that players having a tough time doing actual damage to other players. Rising Star's critical strike damage is now 100% effective in PvP, up from 50, so some buffs to Windwalker here. Still think Warrior comes out ahead on this, definitely comes out ahead. I'm going to be doing a video here covering reward changes and how the gearing acquisition is going to be happening in the War Within coming up very soon, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel to check that one out. But other than that, thank you very much for watching the video. Hope you guys enjoyed this update, and I will see you in the next one.